Hi, my name is Skylar Saunders, and I'm a second-year student at the Lambton College Fire School. Today I'll be presenting my research report that I wrote called Suffering in Silence that is about mental health in the fire service. In my first slide, I'm going to overview some of the main points I'll be discussing throughout this presentation. This includes the mental health problems that firefighters deal with in their profession, as well as some of the causes of these issues. Lastly, I'm going to provide some solutions to these issues, and that will conclude the end of my presentation. In my next slide, I'm going to talk about the overall purpose of my report. So the purpose of my report is to bring awareness to the topic of mental health, as well as provide education in order to help reduce the stigma of it. I'm going to be going on to my next slide now, where I will begin to discuss some of the mental health problems in the fire service. I will start out by talking about PTSD. Firefighters are at a much higher risk of developing PTSD as compared to any other occupation. This is because of the fact that they are consistently being exposed to traumatic events. Studies have actually shown that 7 to 37% of firefighters meet the criteria for a diagnosis of PTSD. In my next slide, I'm going to talk about depression in the fire service. The trauma firefighters deal with on a day-to-day basis can leave them feeling run down and empty. These strong emotions only worsen over time if they do not seek help, ultimately resulting in them developing depression disorder. Depression decreases their level of energy and motivation, as well as impairs their job performance. It can also threaten their own relationships, health, and life. In my next slide, I will be talking about suicide, which can also be known as the silent killer in firefighting. Did you know that firefighters are 3 times more likely to die by suicide than in the line of duty? This statistic is alarmingly high and only goes to show the heightened risk of suicide in firefighters. To further support this, in the picture I've posted on the slide here, it shows the rates of suicidal thoughts and behaviors in firefighters compared to the general population. The amount of firefighters who admitted to contemplating suicide was actually 3 times higher than the general population. As well as this, the lack of communication on suicide results in higher rates of it. There is a common misconception in the fire service that no one talks about suicide. So therefore, many people suffering stay silent, and by suffering alone and remaining silent, this is what leads them to committing suicide. Next, I will begin to discuss some of the causes of these mental health issues. The first cause I will be discussing is the work environment in this field. It is safe to say that firefighters have one of the most dangerous and stressful professions of them all. As well as this, they deal with a lot of traumatic experiences constantly. Over time, this can take a heavy toll on them, and if they don't reach out for help, it can lead to the development of PTSD or other mental health issues, such as anxiety, depression, or even suicide. Furthermore, in my next slide, I will be examining the stigma towards mental health that exists within the fire service. 92% of firefighters view seeking treatment as a weakness. From this statistic, it is evident that there's a huge stigma towards mental health that exists within the fire service. This stigma makes it extremely difficult for firefighters to seek help as they don't want to be viewed as weak. Ultimately, this results in them suffering alone and developing severe mental health issues. After reviewing some of the causes of mental health issues, I will now move on to the final section of my report, which is discussing some possible solutions. My first solution that I will be discussing is ending the stigma. Ensure that all firefighters within the department know that it is perfectly okay to struggle and need help. By reducing the stigma, it will strongly benefit the department by making it a more welcoming and accepting environment, which improves the overall safety and well-being of each crew member. Another important factor for an individual who is struggling is that they have meaningful social connection. This ensures firefighters are able to support one another in times of need. Having a good support system is one of the best ways to prevent PTSD and suicide. In my next slide, I will talk about different ways firefighters can be proactive in bettering themselves. There's a variety of skills a firefighter may practice in order to improve their overall well being. These practices include mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, meditation or yoga, and having gratitude. Additionally, having a steady support system and getting enough adequate sleep are also ways one can help to better themselves. Lastly, there's a variety of different treatment or therapy options available to firefighters that can significantly improve their mental health. My next slide will gloss over some of the specific programs available to firefighters, as well as discuss the importance of education on mental health. There have been numerous programs created over time specifically geared towards firefighters in order to help prepare them both physically and mentally for the job. These programs include the Everyone Goes Home program and the International Association of Firefighters. As well as this, it is crucial for firefighters to receive education on mental health, as it often helps to drive out some of the stigma surrounding the topic. Education also provides opportunities to promote mental health and really accentuate the importance of it. Lastly, it can help to normalize the need to seek help. In my next and final slide of this section of my report, I'll be discussing how to prepare for the worst. As tragedies are bound to happen in this field of work, every fire department should ensure that they are prepared well in advance for any tragedies or loss they may have to face and overcome. A mandatory briefing should be held after any traumatic event in order to ensure the safety of those individuals who suffered from the loss or tragedy. By being prepared well in advance in the event of a tragedy, it will help to establish a less devastating effect on the overall department. Now I will move on to my final slide where I will conclude this presentation. The issue of mental health in the fire service is a topic that needs to be continually talked about widely and publicly because, again, silence often hides the very issue one must confront. At the end of the day, how can one save others and take care of other people if they cannot take care of themselves?